Hey folks, so per request, here's a video of me trying to knock out some of those projects. Um, this was taken last Thursday, so December 29th, and it has just been kind of a bear to find the time to edit and do the voiceover for this because a lot of it I didn't want you guys to have to watch in real time. This video is still like over 14 minutes long, even with me editing a lot down. I think you'll get some value out of it. I just think that voiceover was going to be the easiest way to kind of narrate what all was happening. So first thing we were doing was trying to get Toast moved. Again, like you've seen in the Farm Tour Tuesdays, which this week's is coming out a little late. We've been trying to get him moved, and this is what I have dealt with every week that I've tried to move him. He'll start to follow me, and then he'll just get distracted. Thankfully, Claire came over here and was able to grab the tripod and kind of like move it a little bit so that we could try to catch most of this, but she didn't lower it or anything. My Vivo is charging, so I was not able to use it to film this, so sorry about that. He would just, like, he'd get really interested in the bucket, and this is what he'd been doing. He'd get interested in the bucket, and then he would get distracted. Like, I swear this guy has ADHD. Like, ooh, butterfly, and then just wanders off. Maybe that's why I like him so much, is he reminds me of me. But yeah, so at this point, like, we were starting to get pretty frustrated, and I knew there had to be an easier way to do this. So I went and got a sheet of plywood to use as a pigboard. I really need to build a pigboard because that would make my life easier. But you can see him just being an idiot with that spot. He peed there. That's him. There's no other boar that is introduced to scent there. No one has been around that spot forever. That is his own pee that he is so enamored with. So we got the board. Claire started leading him with the bucket. He would kind of follow it, and then I'd have to, every time he got distracted, force him with the pigboard. And he did not like this, but he's not aggressive in even the slightest form or fashion, so it was not a big deal. But yeah, we finally managed to herd him over there, and once we got him in the backyard and I closed the gate, he followed Claire right back there. I don't know what his deal was outside of there, but once he was in the backyard, he followed her right back. It was not an issue, so I had to run back real quick and grab the camera. Thankfully, she didn't mind putting him in there, though. So there we go. And next was the fun task, in which you guys all saw that short. And if you didn't, it's over there. I cropped in closer to watch him running up. It was great. Probably one of the best shorts I've ever made. But beyond that, I just wanted them out of my way because they're just so curious and nosy, and even then, Dose comes down to pay me a visit while I'm working. But I needed to fix that sheet of tin on the side of their shelter. So here we go, throwing the pieces in, and I speed through this pretty quick, but even then, there was a lot to it. That X that was done on the feeder one is still holding up fantastic. So I am thoroughly confident to keep employing that as the method of making sure the tin stays secure and stopping these from moving. I had actually ran out of straps that were good, that all had hooks and everything. I'd had one or two straps that were torn. So once I got these pounded in, which it had just rained, so thankfully they pounded in nice, I had to tie this one to the bottom and then run them over and strap them. But for those of you that haven't seen that other video, I recommend going and watching that. And then from there, I screw up and do that. And you can see the dent in the bottom corner of that bucket. So that was great. I was not aiming for the bucket at all. I was just trying to toss it over. But then spreading some hay over all of the muddy areas around the gate and then working where they paste the fence. I hate dealing with mud, and I love this stuff because, it's full of seeds. So it does a great job of trying to soak some of that up while also feeding them. I'm going to do an entire video on, why we do this later on. So probably when we get the second batch of hay, end of January here, because by that point, there will be almost no grass left anywhere beyond hay. So at that point of year, it kind of is what it is. But thankfully, by the end of January, once we hit, it's only a month or so left before we really start getting a decent amount of growth again. And because for us, really, it's middle of March, beginning to middle of March, we can start to see a good green up. Sometimes even in February, we'll start to see a little bit of a green haze start to come in. It just kind of depends on our weather. But southern Missouri, it seems to be that the worst snow and ice we get is January, February. So we'll see how that goes. And from there, we're moving over to the piglets, which is the last big set of tasks I needed to do, which was get this fella castrated and give all of these guys their ivermectin because they have not been ivermectined yet. This is honestly my favorite way. I hate having to chase the piglets around their yard with a net. It works, right? But their shelter's like just shy of 8 feet. It's technically 8 feet all the way across, but those posts then make it just shy of 8 feet. So they're super, super easy to catch if I just put some feed in there and wait for them to go in and eat and then move that board. It makes my life so, so convenient because then I can just go in there, catch the piglets, do what I need to do, and then either step out or set piglets over that board. If you don't have a good setup for something like this, like I've seen some great creep feeders that people can then trap their piglets in. I totally recommend building or figuring out a spot on your farm that you can do this. And it's nothing even permanent. Like I just have some big old stones in there that I just lean up against it to hold it in place. And then those stones are just kind of always there. No big deal at all. And then I always like to figure out exactly where the piglet is before I go in and grab one to make sure that I'm not riling everybody up. Like it's easier to just stand back and watch. This is that boar that needed castrated. And unfortunately, he was way too big for my castration station. I gave it a good 2-3 tries there to get him in. Could not, even trying to adjust the bar. So I wound up moving to the ground to do this. And this is the first time that I've had to do it on the ground by myself. Normally I do it with that station and it's a breeze. This took from like actual time recorded, watching it back and going through the timer. It took me 1.5 minutes to do it this way, which is like 3 to 4 times longer than I normally would take to castrate. So I felt really bad for this guy that he had like 1.5 minutes of being on his back like this after me trying to do with that. But even then, it was no big deal. Like most of that time wasn't him, going through anything. It was me just trying to shift because he kept moving or wiggling, or I didn't want to put weight down on him. Like normally if you were going to do it like this by yourself, you'd sit on like a straw bale or something like that. So they've got some cushion and you can kind of hover over him a little while having some support on your legs. Since I had no support and didn't want to press him down into a concrete ground, it was not that convenient. But we got it done. He's good to go. He is still rolling fine. And then to wrap it out for him, he needed an ear tech because he didn't have an ear tech yet, and he needed his shot of ivermectin, which is the oral, same as we always do. And we've got at least 1 to 2 videos on that topic already. So I'm not going to bore you guys with that, although here in just a sec, we're going to go through that with all of the piglets that are still in there. So, and there goes his testicles. Like I just threw them off in the field because there's nobody over in the L right now. Not a big deal. And you can see I do buy the big bottle of ivermectin. There's no reason to buy a small one. It takes forever to expire. If you have a decent number of piglets, you're going to wind up going through that big bottle. So, I guess I would talk about that a little bit. So we try to only ivermectin in the field here, or not in the field. The goal is not in the field. The goal is to ivermectin in these little areas like this. So in the yard here, all their poop goes out into here and we can remove it and take it straight to the compost. So I'm not worried about it messing with dung beetles or the biology in our field. And the feeders only get ivermectin once. This little guy, as you can see, I'm looking him back over. He had actually gotten a piece of grass seed in his eye, which we'd had an issue with that back at the bison ranch we used to manage. Just grass seeds causing pink eye. So this poor little guy did. He had it in there. He didn't have pink eye yet, but it does look like it's scarred over in the eye. So I don't think he can see real great out of that eye anymore. But it is what it is. I got it out of his eye. He's still acting fine, moving around, and there's one other one towards the end that he wound up having the same issue, but in both eyes, and he's still acting fine. He's got some whitening across the iris, so I don't know how well he's seeing, but it's just those two. I did check everybody as we went, and you notice that was that little gilt. Of course, she came up curious enough, so it was super easy to catch. All of these guys so this is the injectable noromectin, and it's 1 cc per 50 pounds live weight. but I'm not injecting it. I don't like doing injections because there's always a little spot in the meat when you inject. So I don't even inject my breeders because most of my breeders, I anticipate the fact that they will probably be cold for meat at some point. Also, stupid windy. So blowing that seeds all over into my eyes too. Yeah. And that guy, I swear to God, he's got to be getting close to 100 pounds. He was so heavy. He was quite a bit heavier than all the others. Yeah, anyway, he was a bear. So I don't inject it because I don't like it leaving a spot in the meat. Because I worry about, like, I don't want anybody else to find that in case the butcher doesn't find it. So even though you go in the neck, like, the neck is still super valuable meat. Like, that is where you'd pull the capa from, or soup bones, or anything like that. So, like, I absolutely don't want to ruin that with an injection when giving it orally is fine and was approved by my vet. It was actually her recommendation that I do so. So this has worked absolutely fantastic. And most people ask, like, because I deal with a lot of people that, you know, they don't want to give chemical dewormer, and I totally get that because we didn't want to for the longest time. But every time we do notice parasites. Like, it's never terrible because, you know, we still rotate, but like these guys, they didn't get any rotating, right? They were in the farrowing yards, and then they were trapped in this yard, and the day or two after this, there is a decent amount of roundworms that you'll find in their poop from this ivermectin killing the worms and then them expelling them. So I do go through and with a shovel and scoop all of those out anytime I find them. So for 2 days afterwards, I am hunting down any single parasite I could find. And it's never, like, even with these guys, it wasn't a ton, but it was enough that was like, I don't want that sitting around and the risk of them, you know, just being bored and eating it back up. And it is dead, but you can see oftentimes little parasites in those parasites. So like you can see little baby Ascaris worms in there, even though the normal reproductive method is via oocysts or eggs that they pass out. They do still pass some clonally like that. So you want to make sure that you scoop those up, or if you ever just find them out in the field in their poop, one, if you find them out there in the field in their poop that they have passed naturally, then that means their worm load is really, really high. They should only pass them when you've dewormed them and so killed all of them in their actual intestines. If they're passing them normal, then you've got a very high parasite load and you need to go ahead and worm them then and get that resolved. So bring them up somewhere off your field, give them wormer, keep an eye on them to remove any that they wind up expelling, and then they can go back out once about a week or two afterwards. So these guys, I'm wanting to, you'll see in the Farm Tour Tuesday, I'm going to talk about that. I recorded that this morning. About I want to release these guys out into the L, so which causes a lot of problems with my rotations. So it's throwing me through a lot of loops here. But I want to make sure that they have expelled any and all ivermectin in this poop, so I can go ahead and remove it after I'm pretty sure I've gotten any Ascaris out. Although of course there will always be some. And I'll move it to our compost, which our compost rarely goes into our garden beds. It's more for like the shrubs and trees that are up in the front yard, or willows or things like that. So it's never usually an issue that I'm worried about, like, oh my gosh, we're going to get roundworms or something. No, we almost never use our compost in our beds from that pile because we already have, so like, we've been building up our compost for years. So most of our beds are full and it's not an issue. But I would imagine after a set time period you could, and it'd still be fine. But I have enough uses for compost otherwise that I'm not worried about it. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up, folks. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, Raymond and Ashley Hunter. And thank you to all of you guys that make it through our videos. I hope you got some value out of this and that you enjoyed it. So you guys have a great rest of your week. See you next time.